Now that you've completed Module 1, we're jumping into Module 2. In Module 1, you got your fingers moving around and aware of finger numbers, and you took a stab at whole steps and half steps and developing that major 5-finger pattern. But now I just want to let you know that there are 3 things you need to know to be able to read music. And the first thing is you have to recognize whether the notes go up. Second thing you have to recognize is if the notes go down. And the third thing that you need to recognize is how far do they go up and down? Do they make a big leap? Do they just step? And so there's some things in music that will help you to identify how far apart those are. So if we go back many, many hundreds of years, we might think of people who were first writing down music so that there would be a record of what they were doing, and they needed to decide a way to measure how far apart the notes were. And I think that because of their 5 fingers, that they created what we call a staff, and it's made of 5 lines and the spaces in between. So let me just draw those 2, 3. And by having these lines and spaces, we are able to measure how far apart the notes are. And you could almost think of this as a ruler. And so I can put a note head on this line, and then I can put it right on the space. And by having those that close from the line to the space, I would count the line as 1 and I would count the space as 2. And we talked about the intervals. We use the word intervals, as you know, that's not a musical word, but an interval in our musical sense is that it's determined how far apart the notes are. And so this is a very important skill. I know it seems very basic at this moment, but a very important skill for you to be able to see what those distances are from those notes. When we have it 1 to an interval of a second, those 2 notes are right next to each other on the piano keyboard. If we had 2 notes space to a space, we would count this as 1 on the space, 2 would be the line, and 3 would be the space. And we would call this an interval of a third. And again, as I mentioned, that would be an interval of a second. And so it's very important for you to be able to recognize these. And so we'll be talking more about this in our module number 2. So let's pursue this a little bit further. Now with those lines and spaces that we are using, and I will put these back up here, and we again call this a staff. And my lines aren't always straight, but the most wonderful thing about the keyboard, the piano, is that we have such a large range of musical notes. So we can't just use one staff because that only takes care of the upper half of the keyboard. And so we need another staff down here, and we're going to use our 5 lines with representing our 5 fingers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 more to go. And this part is going to represent the lower half of the keyboard. Remember, the lower half of the keyboard is to your left. So now we have a group of lines up here, the upper staff and the lower staff, but there's nothing up there that tells us what note is what. So if I just put a random note there, there's no way for you to tell what that is. So what I'm going to do instead is that I'm going to put a symbol up here at the beginning, and this symbol helps us to know what the name of the notes are. If you use your imagination, you might notice that that looks a little bit like a G. And so actually we call this the G clef, the G clef. And I think that some of you already know that it represents the treble clef as well. It has those 2 names. The G clef, I like to use the word G clef. It's a little more specific on what its purpose is, because it circles around the second line of the 5 lines, and it tells us that when we have a note on that line, it's the G, and that's the note that you play on the keyboard. Let me just play that for you. That's the sound, and you'll notice that it's right near the name of the piano in the middle of the keyboard. Treble clef just means that treble meaning it's the higher notes, and when you have this part, these notes are on the higher clef. The higher staff, you would be playing the notes more to the right of the keyboard when you have it in the G clef or the treble clef. Now again, as I just said, it's so wonderful that the piano has such a wide range of notes, and so we need another clef sign down here to play the lower notes. So I'm going to draw another symbol right here. This is called, if you use your imagination, this is called, it sort of looks like an F, maybe you could give me that, and we are going to call this the F clef because it has a big dot here. It has two dots here on this second line from the top, and when we have a note that sits on that line, that is the F line, and so you know now where that note is on the keyboard, and it's the F below the, near the name of the piano, but more towards the middle, and it sounds like that. This is the F clef. Some of you may know it as the bass clef. The bass clef meaning it's the lower half of the keyboard towards the left-hand side, and we'll be playing the lower notes or the bass notes. And so these two clef signs are often, mostly, played together at the same time, and we put a little brace sign like that, and this is called the grand staff. The grand staff. Most instruments that you learn will either play one staff or the other, but the wonderful piano needs that whole big area to include everything. Now there's some notes on the staff that are very important for you to get to know, and so let's talk about those. So again, the G clef, the second line is a G, and so we're going to go, if this is G, remember the notes in the music that we use are the musical alphabet, which is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then it just starts over again after that those four notes. So when we get to the G, we're going to start all over. So this would be an A on the space, a B on the line, and this is a C right here on that second space down. Now when you're going down on the staff, you're going to be saying the musical alphabet backwards. So because of this F clef, we know that that note is an F, so we're going to step down F, E, D, and then we're going to go to C. So notice this C is the second space from the bottom. Notice this C, I made it a little bit big, but this C is the second space from the top. So we want to get to recognize these. We're actually calling these landmarks because we want to memorize these and know them well. So if this is C, we're going to continue the musical alphabet. C, D, E is the space, F is the line. It sits on the outside space of the G clef. This is a high G. And then we're going to go down here. Remember that this is C. We're going to go backwards in the alphabet as we count each space and line. C, B, A, G is a line, and F is the outside space. Remember, we're in the F clef. The outside space is an F. Remember, we're in the G clef. The outside space is G. I have one more note for you to consider. Now, we have the 5 lines and the spaces, but we have more notes than that. And so we're going to add short little lines called ledger lines, and those are going to expand our staff either higher or lower. So remember this is G, and so when we get to that in the musical alphabet, A, B, C, D, F, G, we start all over to A. So the next note would be A. And so I'm putting my short little line, again, those are called ledger lines, and then I would put my short little line again, and that space would be a B, and I am going to go up one higher than that, and 2 ledger lines. So let's count. This is G, the line is A, the space would be B and C. So that is a high C on the keyboard, And then we're going to do the same thing down here in the bass clef. Here's F, and then we go, a ledger line would be E, the space is D because we're saying the alphabet backwards as we go down. F, E, D would be the space, and C would be the 2 ledger lines. Actually, we have one more note to talk about. And that would be the one right in between the treble staff and the bass staff. And this would be a G, the space is F. This is an E on the line. The D is a space, and we're going to add 1 ledger line to extend the notes below. And this one is middle C. This is the C right in the middle of the keyboard. And then we can go up and do exactly the same thing. So here is F, and we're going up, so we say the alphabet forward. F, G, A, B is the space, and here is that line, middle C, and these can, when it's this one near the G clef, we play it with the right hand. When this one is near the F clef, we play it with the left hand. I call these the landmark notes because I want you to get to know them well. I want you to memorize these notes, and these will help guide you as you're learning the keyboard and learning to read music as well. So again, this is on the second line of the G clef, and so if we know that's G, then we would read that note right above it, because remember the alphabet A, B, C, D, F, G, then it starts all over to A, and so that would be an A. And so that's how we want to know that that's an A, how it relates to the landmark notes. And again, I need you to memorize these notes. And what's interesting about that, if my whiteboard was magical and I could fold it in towards itself, you'll see that I have a mirror image. This is the second line from the bottom, second line, these two match, the G and the F. This is the second space from the top, the second space from the bottom. If I folded them in, those would be a C. If I folded that in, right here's my fold line, the outside space is G, outside space is F. And again, if I folded it, the 2 ledger lines is a C, and the 2 ledger lines is a C as well. And so we need to spend a lot of time on that and make sure that you are very, very comfortable with those note names. So as we look at those, just real briefly, I want to let you know about something called time signatures. The book also refers to it as meter signatures, but we're going to use mostly about time signature. It's a fraction that you'll see right after that, and we'll talk about those in our next video.